So the pitchforks and torches have all been picked up and carried through the streets, led by Chris Nolan and Denis Villeneuve and the like, in this entire debacle that is the HBO Max situation. But it's not a debacle for the reasons you think. Hey, what's going on, everybody? JT Johnson. I am the executive producer and one of the writers here at THEBiGJAY Productions and A New Dawn Media. And I just felt the need to weigh in. I got to talk very, very clearly about what's going on with HBO Max and the nonsense that's being spewed out in the world at the moment. I don't even know where to begin, so forgive me. This isn't my normal style of video, but I just felt like I'm listening to everybody lose their minds. And I find myself asking, what is everyone thinking? Like, legit, what is going on here? So apparently Denis Villeneuve decided to respond to the HBO Max situation, and he sent it to I think it was either Variety or Deadline or one of the two, one of those people. And the gist of it boiled down to the same thing that, as far as I'm concerned, the Chris Nolan stuff boils down to, which is elitists getting angry. Now, people have tried to say, well, it's not about money and this and that. Oh, it's exactly about money. That's everything it has to do with. And anybody who tries to say otherwise is an absolute liar. Because systematically, that's what this all boils down to. It boils down to the fact that, people are angry about residuals and contracts and everything else. So let's go through the ugly first. Let's talk about the ugly for a minute. First and foremost, if Warner Brothers is guilty of anything, it's that they didn't talk to some people, and that's pretty darn disrespectful. Hands down. Giving you that all day. The biggest issue that I've got with a lot of what's going on is people try to sit here and don't seem to understand. This is a company, meaning AT&T, who is being responsible to their shareholders. Now, many people are saying, well, they don't care about the audiences. That's actually one of the biggest things in Denis Villeneuve's statement that he talks about is, well, clearly they don't give any regard for cinema. But then he goes on to say, or the audiences. I'm sorry, that's just completely untrue. Let's talk hard facts here for just a minute. The fact is, more people will see your thing at home or have the ability to see it than ever before. Period. Streaming services have actually contributed to less piracy because of them making the ability to see these things so cost effective. Now, Christopher Nolan says, anybody on Wall Street will tell you this and that and the other. You're an idiot, Christopher Nolan. You have no clue what you're talking about other than the fact that this is only about money for you. Period. I am a filmmaker. I've had to deal with people on this level and talk about, movies and things like that and whatnot. We write, story creators and all these things. And the one thing that I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt is, if you're an artist, if you're an auteur, as it will, then you want people to see your thing. The argument was made by Denis Villeneuve that Dune has been created to be, to be seen in the big screen and everything else. I don't know about you. I'm going to see it on a pretty darn big screen. Why? I have a projection screen. I will literally watch it from my Epson projector onto a large scale wall, and I will see the movie in beautiful scale, huge. And not to mention the fact that now I want to see more things on that level. The television industry alone is probably going to benefit a huge amount because they're going to have to answer the call for higher quality and better picture. I'd be shocked if IMAX wasn't already having conversations about how to bring a similar, if not close to identical experience home. Not to mention the fact, let's do some simple math here. Real simple math about the exhibition experience. I know one thing, I love watching stuff with my family. I hate going to the movie theater and watching things there with idiots on their cell phones or people who have loud kids they can't control or whatever else. Bottom line is, period, it has nothing to do with the kids, has nothing to do with somebody with a cell phone, has everything to do with the fact that I can't control that experience. However, I can control my experience at home. Roughly, let's say you really wanted to go big high end and you really wanted a good projector for about $300, you can get a very decent projector. For about $1,500, you can get an amazing projector. For $3,000, you can get an unbelievable projector for home. And at the end of the day, I can control that entire experience. At the end of the day, if I need to pause to go to the bathroom so I don't miss something, I can do that. With the family waiting, going, oh my goodness, why did you do it? And I'd be like, I'm sorry, hurry up. And that's all part of the experience. I'm still seeing it. I don't care. Dude, I've watched stuff on my cell phone. I've watched The Fifth Element, a movie designed to be seen in a massive scale. I've watched it on my cell phone, I've watched it on my iPad, I've watched it on my laptop, I've watched it on my television, I've watched it on my projection screen. I've loved the movie, so I watch it. I love Christopher Nolan's movies. Absolutely love them. I loved Inception, I loved Interstellar, I loved every one of them. I haven't seen Tenet yet. I'll probably be seeing it soon. It's on VOD. I just haven't had time, been dealing with a lot of other stuff amidst the pandemic. However, I never once rushed to theaters to go see Christopher Nolan's movies. I haven't. Why? Generally speaking, advertising usually sucks. I think the most impressive advertising I saw was Inception. However, I'm not a big Leonardo DiCaprio fan. Feel free to crucify me in the comments if you want. But at the end of the day, what I did do was, when I finally did see it, I enjoyed it. I got it. I get it. I love it. It was a good movie. Okay, seriously, everyone was wonderful in it. Same thing was Interstellar. Do I wish I would have seen it in a theater? No. You know why? Because I watched it on the wall at my house. Moving forward, my wife and I already discussed it. We're obviously, as we look for new places to live and whatnot and move from one place to another, we're going to be looking for a place that's got, do we have a large blank wall that we can use? And we're going to make sure that wall gives us the best experience that we want, because we want to use a projector. But then you could go to the movies. Yeah, but I don't own it. I don't get to see it whenever I want. I don't get to pause. I don't have any of the control factors. Listen, I'm not against movie theaters. I need that to be abundantly clear. But I'm not going to sit here and be beholden to the idea that that's the only way that the art can be seen. That's garbage. Patty Jenkins came out with a statement talking about how some enterprising or an entrepreneurial studio is going to eventually realize that the theater-going experience is valuable and important and everything else. And that dovetails into a video that I put out last week. The movie exhibition, the theater exhibition experience is going to change. Fine. Denis Villeneuve, Christopher Nolan, maybe future Patty Jenkins, you want to go and make those things for the theatrical experience only? Awesome. You can do that. What's going to happen is movie theaters and the theatrical exhibition experience is going to become like Broadway. They're going to be special. They're going to be what they are. Anyone who thought that we could continue this Hollywood experience, this bubble that Hollywood's been living in, baby, it is 2008 all over again. Only instead of the real estate market bursting, it's the film, theater, and exhibition market that is bursting. Now, let's go back to talking about Warner Brothers for just a minute. Warner Brothers, if they're guilty of anything, it's that they didn't talk to the filmmakers who were involved, and they chose to make a decision unilaterally that would affect a lot of people. Now, I've heard things like, this was foolish, this was bad business, they weren't thinking, they don't know what they're doing. Everyone who espouses that mentality, you show and prove you have zero concept of how business works and functions. This isn't right and left, this isn't capitalism or not or whatever nonsense. This is literally how a business functions. Right now, everyone's suiting up. CAA is like, we reject your choices on behalf of our clients. Who cares? Directors Guild of America, we reject this. Writers Guild of America, we reject this. Who cares? Elitist Hollywood. Right now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you about your face. And I'm nobody. I am nobody. Right now, you look like a bunch of cranky white men complaining that they're not going to be able to make as much money as they've made. The optics, Warner Brothers is not even remotely worried about it. All of you, your privilege is showing. Period. I've espoused on my Twitter account and whatnot, old Hollywood must go. Because this kind of thing is exactly the problem. Right now, let me tell you how this went down. And I don't know anybody over there. Don't know anybody over there at Warner Brothers. I'm assuming because I have a modicum of a brain and have an idea of how business works. There was probably a big meeting. I've been joking here at the office and saying it was an 8-hour meeting. It was an 8-hour meeting in which AT&T said, okay, HBOmax, Warner Brothers, Warner Media, you guys, we need to know what your plan is. And we need to know now. And they took about probably 8 hours long to explain it. Maybe they stopped for lunch and bathroom breaks. Who knows? But they took the time, they walked everybody through it, and they said, this is what we got going on, this is what our options are, this is what we're going to do. Okay? Okay. And at the end of that meeting, whoever matters over at AT&T said, all right, what's the downside? At that point, the CEO and the team who controls HBO Max, Warner Media, Warner Brothers, all those guys said, all right, well, let's get the attorneys, let's get the lawyers in here. Come on, guys. And all those guys walked in and marched in, and they had another 8-hour meeting. Again, I don't know if this is the case, but there's no way you can explain this whole thing in a few minutes. So I guarantee you they thought it all through. And what happened was, the lawyers sat there and they illustrated and they talked and they explained and they went through the contracts and everybody discussed every aspect of what part of this was going to suck and what the ultimate ramifications were. And at the end of the day, the people at AT&T, the person or people who matter said, all right, hey, guys, listen, I've sat here now for 16 hours straight and listened to this whole thing. Bottom line it for me. What are we looking at? And essentially, it boiled down, nobody cared about the art. Because let's be real, that's not your issue. Every one of you people who's complaining and angry about something having to do with this thing and like, this is wrong, this is this, you don't actually care about the art because your complaint is about the contracts. That's what I'm hearing the most about. At the end of the day, people want to sit here and attack Warner Brothers. Well, I'm sorry, Warner Brothers numbers for their streaming service are roughly at about a quarter of what Netflix's are, and just shy below now, because I believe according to the most recent numbers, Disney's at upwards of 89 million subscribers. They had a huge, or maybe 83, they had a big influx over the last week. That's what happens when you have that monstrous investor meeting that was amazing. And so they're just shy of that. They're a little less than half of that. So at the end of the day, that's not a poor showing. Was it the smoothest rollout possible? Absolutely not. Absolutely. It was really not good. However, it's not as bad as everyone wants to say and paint it. So as much as Christopher Nolan wants to be like, we thought we went to sleep working for the greatest studio in the world and only to wake up working for the worst streaming service in the world. That's not true. I'm sorry. There's Tubi. And Walmart is in the middle of selling Vudu. There are worse ones. All I'm saying. The other part of this is they've bottom-lined it in that meeting. Going back to that meeting, they bottom-lined it for them. And they said, here's what we're going to have to look at and deal with. And the people at AT&T looked at it and went, okay, all right. You know why? Because it doesn't matter what the DGA wants. How could you say that? How could you say that? Because it doesn't matter, period. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. The handful of angry white guys who are the most talented directors in the world, again, your privilege is showing, it doesn't matter. Come on over here to Atlanta. There's plenty of filmmakers. I know many by name, personally, who would not only do amazing things, but if given the opportunity, would just slam that whole thing home. So you know something? All you're doing right now, this everyone acts like it's a backlash. You're warp speed creating the new normal. Because you're going to get so angry. And whatever this fictitious studio that Patty Jenkins is talking about in her statement, which by the way, I have nothing against any of these people personally, I really don't. But I feel like people aren't understanding what's really going on because they're trying to confuse too many issues all at once. Patty Jenkins talked about an enterprising studio who's going to want to create and stay along the old theatrical exhibition model, and that's fine. What that's going to create is the elitist theatrical experience. You're basically creating Broadway 2. That's it. And what's going to happen is You're going to create movies, and you're going to create films, and you're going to create cinema that is ultimately going to live there in this elitist $100 a ticket, $200 a ticket, just like Broadway, model where you get to see your Christopher Nolan movies and you get to see your auteur Denis Villeneuve movies. That's what you're going to find. And then what's going to happen is, what are you going to do? So then go to streaming? Declare war on the streaming services if you want. That is the definitive future. That doesn't mean that you can't have the theatrical exhibition model. It's just not going to be the place it was. The bubble has burst. And because the only difference is, did Warner Brothers take advantage of this entire situation to ultimately make that happen? Absolutely. But Disney was on its way to doing it too. Everyone forgets that only weeks ago, Disney didn't say, we're going to move all our stuff to streaming, but they did say, we are no longer creating things with solely the theatrical experience in mind. They created a distribution division. And that division, by their own admission, will go where the money is. That's not going to necessarily always be the theater. So they simply soft pitched the same thing that Warner Media took a shotgun to and said, this is how we're going to do it. And they Yosemite Sam'd that nonsense. But at the end of the day, it's the same conversation. So what everybody needs to realize and recognize is that's okay. Everyone's like, well, actors are not going to want to go here, and movie theater goers and directors and everything else. So what? There's an awful lot of people out here who want to make stuff. I've spoken over the year 2020, I've spoken to no less than 120 individual personal investors. These are not people who invest in the film industry per se, but they're just investors in general. Angel investors, venture capitalists, and the like. And I've had my fair share of people who are like, oh, just no, flat out, absolutely not. And I've had people who wanted to have the conversation. And the one thing that they continue to talk about is, Hollywood's very confusing, and it's a very scary place to want to get into. And it's hard to understand with the waterfall that everyone's arguing about right now. Waterfall meaning your residuals and who gets paid and how does distribution versus the actor versus the director versus the studio versus the whatever, while the individual investors get lost in the mix. Hollywood, while it wants to be angry at the likes of Netflix and streaming services and whatnot, it's really forgotten. It left behind the $10, $15, $20 million comedy. It left behind the $25, $30 million action movie. Hollywood said, we don't care about these things. So Netflix starts doing it wholesale. And what you see is a resurgence of people love romantic comedies. They love comedies. They didn't love them enough to go to the theater. So nobody cared about those pieces of the artistic expression experience. I guess it comes down to really being very close to, it's going to seem in poor taste, but you know what? Most of this conversation has been in poor taste as far as I'm concerned, where you elitist Hollywood are concerned. You guys were all quiet while you collected your money and abandoned those art forms. But at the end of the day, now the people who are paying the money, they're shifting. They're shifting gears. I challenge the notion that these filmmakers went to bed thinking they were working for the greatest studio in the world, only to wake up to the worst streaming service. And I sit here and go, no, they still work for the greatest studio in the world. Did it stumble? Absolutely. But here's the other part of this thing. Let's go to court. Everybody, let's go to court right now. Everyone's arguing, uproars, lawsuits. People for the United Way is not going to come in and defend the elitist Hollywood millions and millions of dollars that they're going to lose based on some of these moves. There's no universe in which any conversation that you have about what you've lost doesn't make you sound elitist. None at all. Especially when your poster children are all rich, affluent white guys. I don't even like playing the race card, but I'm like, guys, your privilege is showing. So right now, they need to really rethink their approach, because it isn't about it isn't about audiences. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you can't show me and convince me that more people are not going to see things on streaming services, because that is not the truth. It's not. So, yeah, you don't want to make your stuff in this new model, in this new paradigm. Okay. The only lawsuit you have is what they're in breach of. You're going to go in court, you're going to throw up your highfalutin ideals, and you're going to have your moment in the spotlight to talk about art and auteurs and the cinema industry, and nobody's coming to bail out movie theaters. Nobody. The movie theater chains collectively wrote letters to Congress asking for help in the bailout and all this other stuff, and they didn't care about us at home, so why do they care about you? Nobody feels safe going to movie theaters right now. It has nothing to do with vaccines. It has to do with how exposed we feel as a culture. There's bigger pictures and bigger dialogues at play, and God, you all sound so juvenile. And I'm nobody. I'm a guy looking to make film and TV projects. I'm looking to change some of the rules. Our contemporaries here in Atlanta are doing that. You want filmmakers, you need filmmakers. There's a whole bunch of people here who didn't want to have to work in that system. There are people from that system who couldn't find work who came here. Hell, we had a script over at Warner Brothers. President of Warner Brothers literally says to us, this is wonderful and it's a great idea, but we're only going to be, it has to be a known commodity, it has to be a known property from a known IP. That's important information to have. They're not looking to do a lot of risky moves, though this feels like a risky move. They know their business. So as much as everybody wants to try to vilify them at the moment because they're clearly the poster child for all of that, let's not forget HBO were one of some of the people who were making prestige television that everybody was talking big about. They were throwing more money at those things than people knew. And they've discovered more brand new talent than a lot of other places out there. Netflix, yes, they're buying stuff and licensing things, and they're going to have to eventually find a balance to that license versus IP and the things that they own versus the things that they're paying for. They're going to have to find that balance. But you know what? When nobody else wanted to give Martin Scorsese the money to make The Irishman, Netflix did. Did Game of Thrones stick the landing? No, but it redefined fantasy serialized storytelling. And I believed it paved the way for the likes of The Mandalorian. A few years back, Kevin Feige in an interview talking about the evolution of the MCU and how things were going to start changing and shifting from the phases into something brand spanking new, which, by the way, that's at least 3 years ago. I believe this is what he was talking about. I believe the Disney Plus model and all the things that we saw in their Investor Day meeting and all the stuff that's coming, cinematic style storytelling. Yeah, the world is changing and it's scary. But don't find yourself on the wrong side of history, being the people who no different than early Broadway who were like, well, that's it, this is the death of blah, 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 blah. Things change, bubbles pop. We're going to have to figure out what it means now. Yes, Warner's going to have to wear all the contracts they potentially might be in breach of, or they might not. But what you're going to find, by that I mean, I would challenge the notion that they haven't scrutinized every single contract, and that on some level, everything they're doing. Now, I'm not saying it abides by the letter of jot and tittle and the letter of every contract, but I will say this. I guarantee you they've looked really long and hard at every one of these contracts. Every single one. The movies are going to theaters. They're going date and day. And I'm sorry, what you're going to find is there's a big experiment happening. A big experiment happening. Now, they probably should have waited till after Wonder Woman, but I'm willing to go with them that they most likely. I'm willing to go down the road that says, okay, they're predicting some very, very key things. Tenet, whatever, was not the great experiment. I think Tenet was a sacrificial lamb on the altar of this experiment that they're playing. But I feel like they purposely were like, yeah, sure, absolutely, we're going to push and see what happens. And when Tenet didn't do what it was supposed to do, they immediately went to the next phase of their thoughts and plans, and they went straight to Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman is going to redefine, in just a few days, 5 days, Wonder Woman's response is going to redefine some things. I may very well find myself wearing a face mask and looking for a theater to go watch Wonder Woman in. Only because, for no other reason than, I think I'd like to see this experiment play out. I'd like to see Wonder Woman do well enough. Is it going to do skyrocket box office money? No. But we might start to see a shift and start to see that the streaming experience and the ways they quantify those numbers and how all those back-end deals are going to become potentially as lucrative as the theater exhibition experience. So there's a lot of things going on. Hopefully we'll talk more about it. Sorry, this went on way longer than I intended it to. So we'll see what happens, and take care.